Imagine being told your job no longer exists, only to be called back in the middle of a massive financial storm. That is the reality for 500 pilots at Spirit Airlines right now. And the implications for the global aviation industry are far more chilling than a simple hiring notice. Spirit Airlines, once the darling of ultra-low-cost travel, is currently navigating the treacherous waters of Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection. It is a desperate race against time, a battle to stabilize a crumbling network, and a high-stakes gamble on the loyalty of a workforce that has already been burned once before. Today, we are pulling back the curtain on this operational crisis, dissecting why these 500 pilots are being recalled, what it actually means for the future of Spirit, and why your next flight might depend on the outcome of this unprecedented staffing disaster. The aviation industry is built on precision, timing, and trust, but Spirit Airlines has managed to lose its grip on all three. When the airline announced it was filing for Chapter 11, it wasn't just a headline. It was a desperate plea for survival. Behind the scenes, the numbers tell a story of extreme attrition that leadership simply did not see coming. When Spirit initiated its sweeping restructuring plan over the last 2 years, they made a calculated bet. They slashed their workforce, furloughed hundreds of flight attendants and pilots, and trimmed their fleet to the bone in hopes of cutting costs and stabilizing their hemorrhaging finances. They assumed that once the dust settled, they could easily ramp back up. They were wrong. The aviation market, particularly in the United States, has been a feeding frenzy for pilot talent. Other major carriers, thirsty for experienced staff, swooped in and snatched up Spirit's furloughed pilots, offering better pay, more stability, and a future that didn't look like a bankruptcy court filing. This is where the attrition problem becomes a full-blown existential threat. A pilot is not just an employee. They are a highly specialized asset with thousands of hours of flight time and specific type ratings. When these individuals left permanently, they took institutional knowledge and operational capacity with them. Now, as Spirit attempts to emerge from bankruptcy later this year with a smaller, more focused network, they are realizing that they are critically understaffed. The recall notices sent out this Monday represent one of the most visible and perhaps most desperate signs of an airline trying to rebuild its wings while still in freefall. It is an acknowledgement that the lean and mean model they pivoted toward has left them unable to maintain even their reduced flight schedule. But why now? The timing of this recall is everything. Operating under Chapter 11. Protection is an incredibly delicate balancing act. You are trying to convince creditors that you have a viable future, while simultaneously proving to your passengers that you can still get them from point A to point B, safely and on time. If Spirit cannot staff its flights, they cannot generate the revenue needed to exit bankruptcy. It is a classic catch-22. The 500 pilots being called back are not just returning to a job, they are returning to a workplace that has been fundamentally altered. The morale, the operational expectations, and the company culture have been through a ringer. These pilots know that the airline is restructuring, which means they are walking back into a highly uncertain environment. The logistical challenge of bringing 500 pilots back into the fold is staggering. Even if all 500 report for duty, they require recurrent training, simulator checks, and certification updates before they can be cleared for commercial flights. This costs millions of dollars in training hours and resources, capital that an airline in bankruptcy can barely afford to spend. This is the hidden cost of the attrition that Spirit failed to calculate. They saved money on salaries during the furlough period, only to now pay a premium to reclaim their own staff from competitors. It is a cautionary tale for the entire industry about the volatility of human capital. If we zoom out and look at the broader aviation sector, Spirit's struggles are emblematic of a post-pandemic shift. The airline industry has moved from a period of explosive, reckless growth to a period of intense, hyper-focused survival. Airlines are no longer just fighting for market share. They are fighting to maintain operational integrity in a world of pilot shortages, aging fleets, and rising fuel costs. Spirit's specific model, the ultra-low-cost carrier, is particularly vulnerable. When you strip out every luxury to keep ticket prices at rock bottom, you have almost no margin for error. When you lose your staff, you lose your ability to provide the bare minimum, and that is when the brand equity starts to disintegrate. We have to ask ourselves, can Spirit actually survive this? The restructuring plan aims for a smaller, more focused network, which makes sense on paper. You cut the unprofitable routes, you fly to the hubs that actually make money, and you keep your overhead low. But this only works if your remaining flights are consistent and reliable. The recall of these 500 pilots is the first brick in the foundation of that rebuild. If this recall fails, if the pilots don't come back, or if they leave again once the bankruptcy process gets ugly, then the entire strategy collapses. The airline will be left with planes it can't fly and debt it can't pay. For the passengers, the impact is subtle but significant. You might notice fewer flight options, more cancellations in secondary markets, or a general decrease in service quality. But the deeper concern is the safety and reliability infrastructure of the airline. When a company is this strained, every single department is under pressure. From the mechanics maintaining the aircraft to the dispatchers managing flight plans, everyone is doing the work of two people. Recalling pilots is the most headline-grabbing move, but it is just the tip of the iceberg of Spirit's operational struggle. As we look toward the end of this year, all eyes in the aviation industry will be on Spirit. Will they successfully exit Chapter 11 as a leaner, more efficient competitor, or will this be another chapter in the long, tragic history of failed airlines? The return of these 500 pilots is their bridge to the future. It is a bridge that is currently being built while the fire is still burning on both sides. This is not just a story about pilots or a single airline. It is a story about the fragile ecosystem of air travel, where a single miscalculation in workforce management can ground a legend. Stay tuned, because the next few months will decide whether Spirit Airlines soars again or simply fades into the history books. We will continue to follow this story as it develops, and as the pilots make their decisions, we will be here to break down exactly what it means for your next flight. Keep watching, and keep asking the tough questions, because in the world of aviation, the truth is always more complex than the view from 30,000 feet.